Anderson is a scheming boy to grab a share of the cod market. I made a Pro Max crab pot. The first time I used it, I caught the codfish in the barn. So many that the crew want to puke at the sight of cod, the kind that really throws up. The scene begins aboard the Dutch Harbor Northwest. Recovering from the berth, Mandy boarded the Northwest, ready to sail again with old White Clark. On the Legend on the other side, the crew are preparing supplies for the sea. Back to the Northwest, White and Mandy are chatting in the cab. The crew is preparing supplies for the sea. Then the old White talked about the planning of the sea. This time we're going straight north, to the Bering Sea border 600 miles away. It takes about 2.5 days. The only thing wrong with that place is a lot of ice. But Mandy doesn't think it's a problem. Once the crew has packed up their gear, Northwest sails 190 miles northeast of the Summer Bay. Bill recruited a new crew member for this voyage. The new crew has never been out to sea, a little seasick at the moment. They have now sailed for a day. We'll be at the Aleutian fishing grounds in no time, since the Summer Bay cost more than $400,000 to repair. So Bill is now poor Jingle. Hope must rest on this quota. This time Bill's fishing target is white cod. After white cod fishing, according to port regulations, blood must be bled and returned to the dock within 3 days. With arrival near the destination, the new crew starts to puke. It looks like a fountain. Bill laughed when he saw the new crew. Well, there's still work to be done. The crew then hose the deck. The crew starts throwing crab pots. Bill above also shared his thoughts. He said he was going to build a tunnel. When the cod swim in the water, we'll be attracted to the bait into the crab pot. Follow the crab pot into the sea one by one. 195 miles southwest of Dutch Harbor. Anderson's got the crew working on something big. It feels like the crew is slow and can pick it up on their own. Anderson calls this thing he's building a monster cage. It's like dropping 4 cages on top of each other. Finally, put half a ton of crab bait in the monster cage. This attracts schools of cod all at once. The cod are then caught in a normal crab pot. This monster cage weighs 2.5 tons, 3 tons with bait. It's about the height of a 3-foot 61 building. With the crab pots ready, the crew begins to weld. The monster cage was welded half an hour later. Anderson was quite pleased with the cage and said it was his favorite piece of art. The crane's going to have a hard time lifting this thing. After setting it up on the elevator, Anderson took the mission out to sea, 50 miles north of St. Paul's Island Northwest. Mandy was on duty in the cab. She says the waves here are 6 or 7 meters high. Add to that the howling north wind, causing ice to form all over the deck. Then Mandy went to look at the deck. She feels the ice is a little more than she expected, but the crew is sleeping. I don't want to disturb their dreams. Finally decided to see what happened. The time came quickly in an hour. Things were even worse on deck. Even the crab pots are covered with frost. Mandy also felt the angle of the dump increase when she drove the boat. She dared not delay any longer. Hurry down and wake up Old White. The Old White came up to see the blank. This crab pot is mostly frozen. Look at the bow after the crab pot. It felt like the sky was falling. I quickly explained the stakes to Mandy. I could see that Old White is really in a hurry this time. Then he told Mandy to hurry up and get everyone up. White had a cup of coffee after Mandy left. Get ready for the big battle ahead. They're 250 miles from their destination. Old White is ready to throw 100 crab pots to lighten the load on the boat. Then the crew began to de-ice. Prepare the crab pot after removing the ice. Then pick a spot and drop the crab pot. Follow the crab pot into the sea one by one. The Old White is a little more relieved. Now he's worried about Mandy's safety. After all, in the dangerous Bering Sea, one little accident could kill you. 330 miles southeast of the Legend. The weather is not so good on their side. The crew is also de-icing the deck. Anderson said they're only a quarter of the way there, but the extreme low temperatures have frozen the entire deck. At this rate, the crew is de-icing. Not as fast as ice on the deck. It won't be long before the ship is weighed down by the ice. Add to that the crashing waves. There's even ice in the waves. Anderson is really afraid of the crew GG. After some thought, Anderson tells the crew to start throwing crab pots. Then the crew begins to prepare crab bait. Anderson above watched the monster cage lost in thought. He never thought it would freeze. After all, 2.5 tons of stuff has 2 tons of ice on it. Anderson was afraid his elevator wouldn't hold. Once the elevator starts, it just means to move twice. But it didn't take long for the elevator to slow down. A smile finally broke out on Anderson's face. The following time is the normal cage. Half an hour passed slowly. Most of the crab pots on the boat went down. Anderson said this time out, except for a little mishap, it went pretty well. 70 miles northeast of the Winona. Sean gave Bill a call. I didn't do anything except see Bill around. By the way, ask Bill how the harvest is around here. Bala 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 to greet. After hanging up, Sean tells the crew to start casting cages. This time he's going to start with 32 test cages. It would move faster if there were no cod in this place. Then the crew checked the machinery. When no obvious fault was found, the cage was thrown. Then one crab pot after another enters the sea. Sean's been doing the same thing. Half an hour later, the ship's alarm went off. Sean took a closer look and realized it was a malfunction in the engine compartment. The crew saw this and hurried down to inspect. Went down there and took a sweep with the temperature gun. Found the left engine overheating. No man, the engine is smoking from cold water. Sean then returned to the cockpit to consult with the crew. First, I told the unsuspecting crew that the engine was overheating. Then send the crew to find repair tools. If we don't find them, they're heading back for repairs. Then they discussed the details of the meeting. Bala bala bala, 18 miles southwest of the Summer Bay. They have now reached the cage position. After Bill tells the crew to be safe. The crew began today's salvage operation. Bill said he had no money now. I'm here for the cod because the cod quota is cheaper to buy. It went up once before I added the cod. But most importantly, it's easy to catch. As it stands, Bill has $200,000 left in debt. Bill hopes to catch this winter. It'll help pay off his mortgage and his starting salary. Force with take-up machine. Bill's heart rose as he watched the take-up machine. But fortunately, the harvest in this cage is not bad. As the cod enter the warehouse, the count begins within 72 hours of port regulations. Bill has 72 hours to fill the warehouse. If you can't fill it, you're going to lose money. Then the second cage is still a good harvest. There are 52 big fish after sorting. When Bill saw this, he put on a little snack. Then Bill asked the crew to clean out the crab pots. After the crab pot is cleaned, the crew drops it in place. The alarm went off as soon as the crab pot dropped. Bill also found that the driver assistance was no longer available. Get Landon, the mechanic deck chief, to check it out. At this point, the Summer Bay's propellers stopped moving. Good man, Bill. This is a boat repair hole. It cost $400,000 and it didn't take 2 drives. Langdon checked and found a leak in the steering system, and it's hard to fix. Then Langdon went to the captain's cabin to report. He also took out the leaking steering motor. Langdon also said that the rubber ring on the top had aged. Should be fixed in half an hour. It's not a big deal. If you have the right rubber ring. Landon goes down to fix things after the breakdown. Bill was explaining how important it was. We just need to know we can't turn without it. Landon is going very well. Put the rubber ring on and put the device back on. Bill was worried about what they'd do if they didn't fix it. But at this point, they're already 788. Then Langdon came up and let Bill drive the boat. The propeller runs normally after the engine is started. Then the test steering can also be run. Not as smooth as before though, but it works on the ocean. After the test, the crew went back to work. Bill is going to stay up all night. After all, it took them 3 hours to fix it. 53 miles southwest of the Legend. The weather is pretty good over there. Anderson was just trying to finish the crab pot while the weather was good. Then the crew began fishing for crab pots. The placement of these crab pots was random. That's why Anderson was in such a hurry to get it out. But at least there's a monster cage. Anderson has hope for the area. As the take-up machine begins to exert force, the first cage ship harvest is okay. Anderson clapped. There are a total of 25 pieces in this cage. The harvest is in line with Anderson's expectations. Then the second cage was a surprise. The crew sorted out 52 of them. Anderson thinks it's all about the monster cage. You can't just pick a field and get a good harvest. In the subsequent salvage, their harvest has never been lower than 45. The harvest has also energized the crew. Harvest in this unsung place. Anderson became increasingly convinced that the monster cage was responsible. 325 miles northwest of the Northwest. The ice on their ship was already 30 centimeters thick. This also makes the old White more anxious. After all, White is a chosen daughter slave, so they wanted to send Mandy back. Then he called Mandy up. When Mandy came up here, White said it was too dangerous, and that this voyage will take a long time. Bala finally said he wanted to take Mandy back, and said he had booked a plane ticket. Mandy's first reaction was to say no. Old White heard this as a cool advice, but Mandy wouldn't listen. Say you're with Northwest through thick and thin, and offered to head to St. Paul's Bay for shelter. Wait until the weather clears and come back for crabs. Old White said this weather will last at least half a month. Bala is a piece of advice. But Mandy still listened. So Old White changed his mind. Said Clark was on the boat with your dad and you. If anything goes wrong, what do you want your mother and little Sarah to do? But Mandy didn't answer this time. Just quietly go back to the lounge and sit. 341 miles southeast of the Legend. By this time, Anderson was outside the port. On board was their full quota of 27 tons. Everyone on board hasn't slept in 70 hours. The crew also took advantage of this to fall asleep. The channel through which they returned to Hong Kong was narrow. The risk factor is not normally high. Anderson said there were 90 tons of water in the tank. If it gets stuck, he'll let the water out. Then they saw Fufu, who led the way. Anderson also put the crew on alert. With the crew in place, Anderson heads inside. Watch the depth get shallower and shallower. Anderson was a little nervous. Plus, it was pitch black. The crew is not very good at spotting pilot drifts. Anderson was even more panicked. With the depth approaching 2 meters, they were not surprised to get stuck in the rock. But this time it was only for a moment, because when they got stuck, they were out of the shallow end. Anderson was relieved too, until you see a float in deep water. Anderson was completely relaxed. The time came half an hour later. The seller's fishing boat slowly rolled up. Then the crew began to unload the cargo, start working with the fish. Anderson also got a check for this harvest. He made a total of $31,000 unloading his cargo, and cod for 5 cents a pound. This harvest alone is enough to pay for the oil. Then the view goes to the Summer Bay. Their harvest is continuing. The harvest per cage is stable at 50 animals. Sometimes I can catch a dozen pounds. They've almost met their quota. I just don't know when they're going back. The view comes to Dutch Harbor. Sean's boat was repaired too. They headed once again for the raging Bering Sea. The picture came to the Old White again. Mandy's already packed her bags. They also arrived at the port of Holland Harbor. Finally, Mandy came to the cab, made an apology to Old White, said he shouldn't be so self-indulgent. Bala. Then Clark takes Mandy ashore. This episode ends on the Northwest. Do you want to know what happened next? See the chart below for Captain's earnings.